Hello, everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of FMTraining.tv, where every day we are doing training at 1 o'clock Pacific time. Want to welcome everyone who is there. If you want to check out the upcoming broadcast schedule, you can go to FMTraining.tv. You can see today we got the Claris Corner. We kind of resuscitated the Claris Corner. It was a live stream that Claris would do once in a while, but we're going to try to help them with that and make this an ongoing event. We are actually here live today from Claris headquarters. So I am here with Giuliano. Hi, Giuliano. How are you?
Good, thanks, Richard.
Giuliano is the director slash boss of product management. I always call him a VP, but it gets me in trouble because he's not technically a VP, but essentially he's kind of that level of person. He's in charge of product management for all the product management or just parts of it?
No, for all the product team.
And we got him in the official the booth here at Claris with the official Claris logo and backdrop. It's pretty exciting. All right, and then we got Rick Kalman. Rick Kalman, what do you do here at Claris?
I primarily look after the FileMaker portion of the Claris platform, so all the things that you know and have come to love, and then Giuliano umbrellas the entire Claris platform.
Great. So today is so let's wind this up and I'll start this conversation off. So at Claris Engage, the keynote was like a million slides that were flung at all the people there by the management team at Claris. And there was a lot of slides. And one of the slides that flew by really fast was this idea of a backlog. And there was kind of a marketing backlog, but also a product management backlog. And people are like, what's the backlog and what is this? And I don't understand. And it was really explained at about 900 miles an hour. So we tried to decide we'd come back today and talk about that in a meaningful, useful way. I'm going to share my screen here. So where are we with this? What is the backlog and why do I care about it? What's the plan with that?
Sure, I can kick this off from that perspective. So yeah, as you say, Richard, at Engage, we put a lot of emphasis between the vision we have and the plan we're executing against in order to fulfill that vision. And from a plan perspective, we're making effort to increase the transparency, the visibility, and improve the communication of what we're doing from both a go-to-market perspective and a product perspective. And today we'll focus on the latter one, meaning the product. So the web page that you're seeing and that it's publicly accessible by anybody with an internet connection is the Claris Product Plan and Backlog. And this is a place that basically provide a holistic view of the main platform enhancements that are an improvement that are being made or that are planned.
Okay, so this is kind of like a new level of transparency for people in terms of understanding. I mean, Claris would always have like this ETS testing, right? That would go on and we'd be working on or testing new features. And that's still something that happens, but this is even a broader look than that. Kind of, are these like the next 3 months or 6 months or maybe never, right?
Well, not exactly. So we'll get into the details of what information is actually captured in here and how that's organized. But everything that you'll see that is in progress is stuff for which we have understood the scope, we have resource allocated to that effort, and therefore you might expect that to be available in the next quarter or two, more or less. So that's something that it's being kind of we have a high level of confidence that it's going to be available and live in the product around that time horizon, more or less.
All right. So one of the things you said is that resources have been allocated, right? So that's like those keywords. It's not like fictitious. It seems like it's real.
Correct.
And for us to actually have a public facing list of things that Claris is building into the platform. These are things we're thinking about, but not just thinking about, but they've started to put money behind this, right? Claris has not done this before where they said, this level of transparency. You always hear politicians, it's going to be transparent, right? And then they don't. This is legitimate transparency. This is good. And I can scroll through this briefly. People can see this, but these are new things that are not in there yet. And they say in progress, right? And so this is a big part of this. And I don't know that we're not going to drill too deep into this, but server enhancements, pro enhancements, some of these things I know Jacob Taylor would get excited by. And part of this, I guess, is a voting component. We can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get there in a few minutes.
Sure.
But again, overall, this is an itemized list of things that we're doing and we're enhancing. The list below that you say there aren't comprehensive of all the work that we're doing, right? Some of the things that you see here might need to be enabled by work on the infrastructure perspective, or there's super top secret R&D stuff that we cannot share. But other than that, as the webpage says, but other than that, everything that I think can help developers plan for what's ahead and what set expectation and clarity around what's coming down the pipe from the product perspective across the entire product offering is being captured here.
All right. So the question I have is that, obviously this helps educate the developer community, which is good on helping with them being enthusiastic and knowing where the platform's going. But what else is Claris getting out of this, right? I mean, besides being transparent, the developers love you more. How is this helping you?
Rick may go into that a little bit later, but for us, it's also an opportunity to get a feeling for how people value those proposals. There is a voting mechanism in this page that there's an additional data point for us to get a feeling for how much people do care about some of these product increments. So product increments are just some jargon to speak for an enhancement in the product, an additional piece of working software that provides value add to the person using that software. So we're trying to capture and this list and being itemized in a way that it's clear, that speak clearly for, again, product increments that are going to be delivered by Claris to the developers building with a platform. And the voting mechanism is a way for people to express interest in that. They can, again, that for us is an additional data point that tell us how much people are responding to what's in there, which is obviously interesting for stuff that's in progress. It gets even more interesting for stuff that is at the bottom of the page, as we'll see soon, is what's considered to still be in the backlog, meaning is stuff that is being prioritized, that we're finalizing to understand the scope, that we're planning to execute against, but it's not in motion yet. So in that, there is for us having inputs about from votes, it's an additional data point that allow us make informed decision of what is the next item that we should work on.
Make an informed decision based upon feedback. Yeah, I would just say taking the temperature of the developer community, what they get excited about. Should I ask the question then this obviously was rolled out at Engage. How often will this be updated? I mean, is it like every week, every month, every quarter? How often should this
I think right now we're calibrating at least every quarter.
Every quarter.
If there is, but the moment there is a newsworthy update to push out, it's not a big lift for us. It's just that I can see as a cadence that we feel comfortable in making sure that we can commit and stick to it. Every quarter makes sense. Every 2 weeks or something like that, you wouldn't see dramatic changes in the list anyway with such a short frequency of updates. So that's kind of the quarterly basis is something that for sure could be expected.
Sure, of course. And then for those of you who've been paying attention, Claris has this launch cadence, this cycle time of launching updates. That's about every quarter. I mean, I've seen it vacillate anywhere between 2 and 5 months, I think. And I know you have targets and things, but then a big part of this is, making sure that it's secure and testing and making sure it's ready for market. So
yeah, but I would like to go back to the voting things for a moment, just given that we opened that topic, especially on the backlog. I want to clarify. So getting sentiment for the community, it's great. I just want to make sure that there is no expectation that this becomes a popularity contest against.
Yeah, but I'm much more beautiful than you are.
No. Feature.
Oh, features.
Feature-wise, and that doesn't become a popularity contest, because that's going to be one of the many data points that we have to factor in when we prioritize and we make decision around it. And it's an additional one that is great to have. I just want to make sure that people doesn't expect that because there is something that is winning from a voting perspective on the backlog, therefore it will be the next thing that we'll be doing.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to put the official boilerplate. If some of you have been around in terms of the early testing with ETS over the years, or you'd go to DevCon or Engage, whatever we call it this year, there would always be these things that, we're going to talk about this, but we're not guaranteeing that you're ever going to see it, right? Rick would always, I remember how many times script triggers were talked about, then they would bounce a couple releases, and Rick smiling on the video. The idea is that just because you see it, it means Claris is interested in it, and we can express our interest in it, which helps inform their decision, but it's not a concrete commitment or even, a semi-solid. It's just something that's fungible. Like if I look at
the in-progress stuff, is committed. I mean, we have Claris employees are working on that stuff.
So that's in progress. So then is there other ones
that's in progress? At some point toward the end of this webpage, you'll see a section called backlog. Work on that has not started yet. and things might change on this section only. So everything that is above in
Okay,
progress,
so you combine the
it's
two
moving.
columns so that it was threw us off in the keynote. You had the three columns. You had the completed column on the right, the in progress,
backlog, in
and then backlog was on the left. Okay, we will recycle that and find that for everyone. So the in progress is actually in production, so it's more concrete.
There is people working on it.
Yeah. And then the backlog is so is it more educational for us to vote on the backlog stuff, kind of?
I guess for us, I mean, voting is as a signal is helpful across the board, and obviously cherry picking the items, especially in the in progress section, it's worthwhile. If you vote everything, is like you have voted nothing, right? Because every item is just 10 point extra, so that doesn't really inform us much. Yeah, the backlog is the part where we haven't started working yet. Therefore, it's where we can do more influence, but it's stuff that we have in our plan. Last thing, I think it would be helpful probably for now if for to give an overview of how content is organized in categories and maybe speak for some items and that so that I think it would be helpful for, and we're not going to read out the whole page, but I think it would be helpful for people to understand how content is organized and make a few examples of how this product enhancement are being captured. Again, the intent of every entry in here is not to explain in detail how that enhancement is going to work, but I hope we believe that's enough information for you to understand what's the goal and what's going to be the benefit for the developer once that thing goes live. And Rick can give us a walkthrough through this section. If you're happy to take some questions, but I just want to make sure that we also cover that because I think it's going to be helpful.
All right, Margaret, questions real quick.
I think that people are asking what determines what gets on the list.
Rick, you want to swing up on that?
Well, I think as Giuliano said, one, the top part that's in progress, we're literally working on. So, for instance, if you are in the FileMaker ETS, most of this in progress stuff you are already testing, right? It is every intent that this ships in a soon upcoming release, and what I say by every intent, as you know, until it gets out the door, we can't make 100% guarantee. Something may end up not being able to land, but it is our intention that all of these things will end up in your hands, right? So that's the first part. So that's the meaning of in progress. And then, as Giuliano said, then the backlog becomes the things we're building up to prioritize for what comes after that we will begin to commit. So that's the major organization. If you go back to the top of this document, the way it's organized, you've got the preamble at the top, sort of framing the entire thing. And then what we've done is break it down into key sections, for instance, integration or server or security. And then there's a little bit of snippet of what do we mean by that, right? And one of the things that I'd like to point out, being that this is the first iteration of this, these categories are not necessarily comprehensive of all the categories there ever will be. For instance, there may be something really big that we do to infrastructure that would be visible and have an impact on, performance or, whatnot, that we would then have a infrastructure category, right? Or other categories that aren't there. But to give them meaning, and I just do that to sort of give a context for how we're thinking about where they fit in. Obviously, with FileMaker, many things bleed over and into each other. And then under each one of those things, we try to give a succinct description of what we're trying to solve, what we're trying to bring to you that would enhance your use of the product, and then a description of why and what the benefit and what we mean by that, so that you can begin to get context there. So, and then the other thing is, and Giuliano and Rich, you guys have talked a bit about the voting system. And as you saw, Rich, when you clicked on it, if you click on something, you will increment it by 10 points. Okay, so this one means there were 118 people that voted on this, right? Once you vote, you can't vote again, so you can't game it, and you can't take it away either. Which is also why if you were to go in here and click on every single thing, it's as if you clicked on nothing, because it would change the meaning across the board. But there's two advantages that, from my point of view, that we get here. One, as Giuliano already mentioned, especially on the stuff that's in the backlog at the bottom, that really sort of helps us get a sense of that. However, I also come in here and I see surprises, right? If you go all the way to the top under integration, I would not have guessed. Let's just say it this way: I'm not surprised, but I would not have guessed that enhancing the JSON array functions would be one of the top three things on that list. However, if you realize that JSON is one of the key ways that you interact and do integration with the FileMaker platform, and it also is going to be a key part of the AI LLM stuff that we also have in the platform. These are helping reduce pain points that people who are currently working with JSON arrays to be better at. So I'm really encouraged, because what this tells me is that we're getting a lot of traction on the integration capabilities of our platform, which we believe is a competitive advantage. So there's a lot of information packed into here for us, just in that alone. And from my point of view and from our point of view, and why one of the reasons we want to get this out here and talk about it on Rich's channel here, is that the more people that come here, the more information we have. So far, we have people that we told at Engage, the 600 people that were in the audience, that it was there. We made an announcement on the community. I did encourage people that were in the ETS who have been playing with this to go in as well. We want to get the word out. The more people that come here, the greater sentiment we can see. And it helps also when we launch a product. Let's say we get the next release out and these functionalities, these features, these enhancements are in there. It helps us get an early signal on those things that people are most interested, those things we might want to call out, those things we might want to have engineering blogs or webinars or have Rich and others do additional training on it, because we see there's a great interest in it.
It's funny because a couple of these numbers have already changed. I just did a reload on the page. People have found it and they're already voting.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, as a reminder, vote for the top couple things that you think are the most important. If you vote everything up, then that's effectively a...
Rich, I would give it a little bit of a nuance in that I wouldn't necessarily say reduce. I'd say, if you voted it all, it would sort of just, it's like you didn't vote. However, what I would encourage you to do is, if there's something there that you as a developer will be able to take advantage of, or your organization will benefit from, then indicate that. For instance, Let's Encrypt is something that people have been asking for a while, and that's going to be part of it. And we see that shows up in the top three. I expected that. But you don't always get what you expect, right? So you can see that information. So. But if you use it that way, then we know that we have done something that you think will be useful and you can take advantage of. And we sort of look at the world like this: is you have jobs that you're trying to achieve with our platform. You have certain pains in doing that job, either a bug or some sort of it's not as easy to do or straightforward as it should be, and you're trying to gain from using our platform. So we just boil things down to, you've got a problem to solve, you've got pains with our platform or with things you're trying to achieve, and you want to achieve those and you want to get success. And so we try to dial things into there. And then that gives us an opportunity then also to have tight iterative feedback loops of letting you know what we're doing, having you give us feedback into that. If you're in ETS, you're giving us direct feedback, so that we can make sure that we're landing new enhancements that are actually going to solve the problems you're trying to solve, and also helps us better not get something like 90% of the way there, but never get it over the hump, which is another reason why moving from waterfall annual releases to regular agile iterative releases allows us to continue to work on something until we get it to where we want it.
No, this is excellent. In fact, I see some of these. I've been in sessions where, like Chris Moyer, I remember years ago, we were at the Ace Hotel Total Flop House in Portland doing Pause on Air, and he was doing a presentation on SAML. I would not know anything about that if it wasn't for that guy. And so some of these are championed by developers within the community. It's frankly nice to see this movement in this area. Margaret, questions?
Someone asking about a specific topic, is that allowed, or would you rather field that later?
Just throw it out. We can divert if it's too off.
What does support for related fields and calculations mean? Can't we already do that?
That whole section under there is, if you look, I think it's in parentheses above for the topic, is essentially related to our Claris Studio web development environment. It uses different ways of interacting with the data in the back end. It doesn't use Draco. It uses the Mongo, NoSQL database, and it's got a scripting language, and that's enhancement to allow it to, via the calculation, to be able to query through relationships and that sort of thing.
For what it's worth, I've been working with the studio team here at Claris, working out and making sure that they're like, is it useful? And I'm like, well, it'd be useful if it was this way and this way. And so we go back and forth. It's like a hostage negotiation, right? But eventually, they're making good progress on it. We expect to be able to talk about that in a really super meaningful way. And all these things on here are great. Like they've been talking about the frame support. This thing here, basically, put another way, is imagine a layout inside of a layout. Once again, this is in Studio, not in FileMaker, but if I translate to plain English for everyone else here, imagine a layout that belongs to a specific data source and another layout, and you put them on the same screen together at the same time. So you have different parts of the screen that are feeding off of different data sources. That's really awesome. So this stuff is really cool. Right. So
Rich, the other thing I would say, based on the question we got, is the way to think about this list now is not to think about it as, oh, this is the FileMaker list. That may be a huge chunk of it, right? Because this FileMaker is a huge chunk of the Claris platform, but this is comprehensive of the entire platform, which means it's FileMaker, it's Connect, and it's Studio, and as they interrelate, right? So it's just up leveling it. But trying to get away from the confusion that we had, last year about a named Claris platform that was forked and different. I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about how the Claris offerings, the FileMaker offerings, the Studio offerings, and the Connect offerings all work together. And you'll see an era of this all coming together so that you just have more tools in your toolbox to solve the problems you're trying to solve.
Good call, Rick. I think I did a helpful mental model to look at everything that it's in here, is that when we look at how the requirements for custom application needed by organizations, we do it primarily from 3 dimensions. Number one being the requirements needed for serving internal users, or namely the employees, right? So we're talking about apps that tend to be fairly complex. It's where FileMaker has been shine over the last 3 decades, and where it works great to deliver complex applications that need to run within certain scale and in controlled environments. Then there are requirements to serve external users, so external facing applications. And there are a couple of aspects of those applications that differ from the one for internal users, and primarily are the fact that they cannot rely on pre-configured operating system or pre-installed app, and yet they have to deliver a consistent experience on any device that access those applications. And second, external audience can often have unpredictable behavior and scale, which might happen in spikes. And therefore, there is a technology stack that are better suited to handle those type of requirements, and native web application being that specific stack. And that's where kind of a studio is trying to, the tools building on the studio angle are designed to address that type of needs. And the third dimension is obviously data integration, integrating with data sources, because today the vast majority of applications exist as part of a broader ecosystem. They need to interact with each other and share or exchange data. So those are the main 3 dimensions. And this list is basically goes holistically through all of that. And then we will build those capabilities in where we believe it makes more sense based on the technology available and the tech stack there.
All right, Mr. Kalman, any other questions on this? It's kind of quiet. Questions on what the thoughts here?
So basically, the question people are just asking to confirm everything on this list, including the top half, which I didn't remember the name for, and the backlog.
It's in progress, yeah.
Okay, the in progress and the backlog are all things that are being worked on, just not at the same rate? Or is the backlog not being worked on, or potentially being worked on, and the in progress is definitely being worked on?
The in progress is definitely being worked on. The backlog represents our prioritized groomed backlog. And by that, we have a very, very deep backlogs because we have a very deep and mature product, right? So there's literally hundreds and hundreds of things there. But as we plan for releases, we go through a process of articulating, validating the problems with external customers and such, and then getting them to the point where we say we want to prioritize this because it'll move the business forward if we deliver this to our developers, right? And so those are different than just a deep random. Okay, there's 1,000 things we could do, and literally, remember, I used to get the feature requests. I had 26,000 of them, and they were spread out evenly across the entire platform, except for a few outliers, right? So how do you then decide what to do, right? Out of all those things, and what we try to do is things that if we did it will make a difference to a good. Or if not everyone, then a very substantial portion of people that will allow them to extend the platform, continue to use the platform, stay up to date with the platform, and get more value out of the platform. So I would just look at it this way. There's two things. If it's in progress, it literally is in progress. If you're in ETS and it's FileMaker or it's one of the other ETSs for Studio or Connect, you're going to see these features in there, or you will see them in there, right? Unless for some reason we can't land it. The other ones are, and after that one releases, what comes next? So you'll see the backlog begin to move up into the in progress, and you'll see more things starting to show up in the back as we groom it for saying what's coming next. And you'll start to see movement. This is the first one, so it's static, and then you'll start to see things move, and that's why we update it like on a regular basis or when we need to, because people won't come back to a list that never changes as well.
So Claris is, they haven't said this officially, but I'm going to say it for them. They would like for you, if you're part of the Claris community, it's a free sign up, be part of the Claris community. Please come, especially if you're a FileMaker, use it all the time, or, you've been using it for a while, even intermittently. What are the important items that you see? Do you have an opinion about any of these? Let them know, because there's plenty. Some of these numbers are like, 230 points. That's like 23 votes, right? I'm pretty sure if more people knew about this, some of these numbers would go way up. So part of this is Claris can't be successful if we don't tell them what we value. This is a formal way Claris has been listening to make things transparent and also give you a vote. It's not a binding contract or commitment. It's just you providing your opinion along with other people. What is their opinion?
Kind of a follow-up question, which I'm getting from some people, is, okay, so the backlog is stuff that is going to be moving up the list. How do I convince you to put my blank favorite thing onto the backlog?
I mean, there are plenty of ways. And also, again, the backlog is not exhaustive in a way that the one that is captured there for now. We get, recommendation and suggestion for enhancement from all over the place, whether it's conversation that our sales team are having, customer support, current conversation the product team has with customers on a regular basis, or talking to partners and all of that. I think all of us have a pretty predictable email address that we're reachable in a way. So if there is something you feel strongly about, you can, number one, reach out directly to the product team, or you can send it to me and I can route it to the product manager who's closer to the matter. To put that on our radar. Again, I cannot promise that because I received a suggestion for an enhancement that will, automatically graduate into backlog at any given altitude, but at least we will make sure it gets tracked, or it gets evaluated across many others, right? Oftentimes people have ways to asking for a feature, and in a way is a way to express a specific pain point for which there might be multiple solutions, and we have also to identify patterns, as because multiple people express maybe pain for the same problem through a different solution. We need to, find common elements in that. And then that gets actually translated in a proposed solution, which makes it into the backlog. So there is a little bit of refinement and iteration that goes through processing all these requests, because we need to factor in a variety of aspects, right? Which is not just the request of the enhancements per se that in isolation can make a case for a feature, but it's about, okay, what type of application can be supported by that? What's the scale of it? In what geos, across what industries?
Yeah, how big of a lift to engineer that, right?
There
So,
is
yeah.
that. And then the ROI conversation comes into the table very quickly, right? What is the potential impact of something like that, and how much it costs to build it, and how long it's going to take, and what trade-off we have to make. So if we decide to do this, it means say no to something else.
Right.
And evaluating all that stuff, it's fairly it's a, I would describe it a complex thought process. The great thing about this company is that we have a very large customer base that spans across all geos, company sizes, and industries. But that means that every time you get any form of input, it needs to be contextualized of where it's coming from and understand how many other like that might be out there.
Sure.
And therefore then making next steps. But that said, to put stuff on our radar, you can send it to us. And the idea, I think, the next iteration that we're going to have, we might create an entry point for suggestion here. What, in total transparency, what has been challenging for this organization? We had an idea section on the community. That's no secret. And when the signal to noise ratio in scenarios like that just goes off the roof and becomes unmanageable. It's just
26,000 items, right? I remember talking to Rick, and it was 23, so it's obviously gone up.
And maybe a way to control that is to provide more tools at submission time to further qualify the request.
Sure.
Because right now it was too free-form, and parsing through that, it's just unpractical.
No, I totally get that. Part of these items on the backlog, I will phrase this another way. Claris gets the idea. They determine if it's doable, if it's even doable, even if everyone votes for it, right? Is it even doable, right? So once it's on here, I think they have an idea that they have a plan for it. It is doable. And then they're trying to solicit,
and if it's in the backlog, it's absolutely because we think we can do it.
As opposed to an idea that's like,
that's not a parking lot, and that if it's there, it's that we know we can do it, and we will eventually do it.
Yeah, they've already gamed it out per se.
I think it would be interesting for folks on this call to scroll through that list and sort of get a sense for where other people are excited about. For instance, I saw earlier you were on one where it talked about some advancements we're going to make to the JavaScript add-on capability. What that tells me, based on the votes it got, is there is an interest there, and we're trying to go after the things that currently make it less than optimal to go to what the vision that we had. But that is an extraordinarily powerful capability if done correct, right? So it's good to see that, it's not something, it tells me that, yes, it is something we should continue to invest in. We haven't finished it, we need to. So that really helps a lot, especially when we're prioritizing the kinds of things of, if that was like, got 100 points, 5 people voted on it and everything else was in the thousands, then I would tell me, I should maybe think more about this. Does it make sense to continue down that path?
Well, some of these items are pretty low-hanging fruit, pretty easy to do relative to some other things, right? I can imagine. Like, for example, you had the top call statistics on by default. I can't imagine that being super difficult from the engineering side.
No, that's just changing. Before they were off because of concern that impact to performance, right?
Yeah.
But as machines have gotten more powerful, and as we have looked at that and see what the trade-off is, one of the things we became convinced was that people, since they're not on default, they're not there. When you have a problem, you don't have the information you need to be able to solve it. So then you have to turn it on, and then you have to wait for the problem to happen again, right? And so it just made more sense. We were convinced by talking to a number of developers and doing some testing on the performance impact, that it made far more sense to have these on by default. You can go in and turn them off rather than vice versa. So yeah, those things are very low hanging fruit. However, anytime we change stuff that seems, changing a default from one to the other, we have to think through the implications of the impact to a massive deployment across the world, right? So we don't take those lightly. So, but yeah, there's there's a lot of low hanging fruit we can knock out very quickly. A lot of things that I put under the category, and I don't have that category here as a separate one, but developer quality of life. With the thought that if you are a professional developer in FileMaker, you're spending 40, 50, 60 hours a week week in, week out, year in, year out in our product. And if we can enhance the quality of your life, we're giving you time, which there isn't more of. So we make something easier for you to do. We improve the quality of life of the developer so they can spend more time doing what their real value add is and not fighting with, trying to figure out, how do I force it to do my will?
Yeah, I know Margaret is a giant fan of some of the quality of life improvements, the keyboard quickie search shortcut thingy, whatever we call that. And she keeps I keep finding copies of that version of FileMaker in places, and that's her standard now. Yeah, she's 25, and if she can't do the quick open, is that what we call quick open? That's going to be a big hit for her, especially people who are younger who they don't navigate to their computer by digging through like looking for a file. Like if I run my drive and I open the hard drive, me to open an app like this over here that you see on screen, that's a foreign concept to a 25-year-old. Margaret just does this quickie find thing up here and types it in and starts going to town on it, right? And that looks like that would be a great quality of life improvement to the platform. So very awesome. So Margaret, if we don't have any questions, we're going to think about landing the airplane here.
I do have one which I will ask. How important is platform parity in the work coming through the backlog?
When I think of platform parity on the FileMaker side, obviously I think of things like the Windows versus the Mac implementation, because as you can build it on Mac, you can build it on Windows, and it will work on either side. But there's a difference. There's not 100% parity. The other thing about parity is, for instance, there may be things that we could do very easily. This low hanging fruit on the Mac operating system, maybe a much harder lift on the Windows side, or vice versa, right? And then, so we always have to deliberate on, do these things need to stay lock, stop, and stock and sync with each other, even if one could go further ahead or not? We have to deliberate each time because it depends, right? There's not a simple answer there. So that's what I think about when I hear parity. There's a follow-up clarification of that.
You read correctly. That is exactly what they meant. They wanted to know about same features in each platform. And then I have two other questions that I'm going to ask. I'll do this one first. Will this page be updated once release is out? How often is the update schedule going to be?
Yeah, I guess again, we're going to update the page on a quarterly basis. Whether it makes sense to flag things as done after they been transitioning to in progress because they're now live, we'll see, because otherwise that's going to be a section that will pile up and maybe we'll organize. So that's absolutely possible. But again, the update cadence is still a quarter, and the what's in backlog might get promoted to in progress at that point. So the changes you might expect, the new things will show up in the backlog. Stuff from the backlog is moved to in progress, or stuff from in progress is now being completed and released. So it will figure out as done. Then whether or not this list becomes too long to make sense to have it parked in this page anymore, we'll see from. But that's just a practical matter of how much content will be on the webpage.
Yeah, there was a slide on that. You'll see that in the recording. If you see this in the recording, there's a slide which showed during Claris Engage 24 that it was a completed. Then the middle was in progress. And then, so we're really looking at a web page here that shows us the middle column and the left column of that slide. It's very educational. And so I would expect that at some point when Claris ships the next release, then sometime within a week or two thereafter, then all this stuff would start to shuffle. Rick, are you still going to be, I mean, you weren't super involved with the keynote at Claris Engage, and I guess you told me you were busy working on this list. Are you going to continue to be the daddy of the product plan backlog, or is that someone else?
I will probably do a lot of the lifting for the FileMaker side, but the platform is far bigger than me, and we have others that are looking after Studio Connect or other things that will appear there in the future. But yeah, I'll have a large part of it as long as FileMaker is a large part of our platform, and that's
well, it ain't going anywhere. On the million people using it every day, it ain't. I'm going to say this with bad English. It ain't going anywhere, right? So very popular platform. All right, cool. Margaret, any fun questions?
Fun questions? How do you define? Oh, okay. I thought you said, how do you define fun questions? So there is a question, because there's these little sections that have been like portioned out for the in progress stuff. Why is there not a section for layout development?
I'm not sure I would call it layout development. It's a good question, because I don't have anything coming directly related to that in a way that I would categorize it that way. But that is an example of if we had stuff that was in that area. For instance, if we were going to go in and enhance the how you work with layouts, or maybe even theming and making that easier or more powerful, that kind of thing, then I would add a section there, right? So I think these are not all comprehensive. They're sort of how I keep in my mind how to think about advancements in these different areas, because it's the platform does so many things, right? In my mind, I always simplify it to, first I've got to build something, and then I deploy it, right? And then once I deploy it, oh, guess what? Now I have to maintain it. And that's why I come up with the application lifecycle management. Is the beginning is creating it and getting it up there and sharing it. But then the real work over the years, if you're lucky, is that's something that you continually have to update and maintain. And that's a bigger and bigger part as our platform matures more and more, that we need to address. So therefore, I created that category to categorize these things. There will be others, right? So there's no other meaning other than that there's not something specific under a category such as that you mentioned.
I would point out for everyone's benefit, this is not a comprehensive list. These are the items that Claris wants to illuminate to you. This doesn't include a bug list, which normally there's like hundreds of bugs that are fixed. There's also some very odd, Margaret, you've seen some of these things, some improvements, quality of life improvements that aren't really listed on here. So once again, I'm going to say on Claris's behalf, this is first version or first attempt at this transparency, and how how the community looks at it, their feedback. They'll continue to do this. I would think if it's positive and everyone gets value out of it. But at the moment, it's certainly not comprehensive, because if you knew everything that was coming in the next release, it eclipse this list. It's quite a bit, right? There's some things in Margaret and other development ETS people have seen. Are you still looking for ETS testers, Rick? Or are we good at that point with that list right now?
Well, here's we made a call and brought it to the attention of people at Engage. In fact, during the keynote, when we announced something, we even made the next version in ETS available live at that moment. And then I ended up getting about 40 new testers out of just that Engage event and that one announcement. And that was just on FileMaker, because also for Connect and Studio, we got some as well. So the way I look at it is, if someone reaches out to me and they want to be a part of the ETS, then I consider them motivated enough to give it a try. Typically, what I'll then do is, as we have another program for, say, another release, I like to go back and see who has actually reported bugs. And if I need to do a cut, then I take the most productive, or I take people who have some specialized capability or knowledge that we know we need to get tested, right? And then we'll just, because in the end, the ETS is not as valuable if we're not getting feedback from you, if you're not looking at stuff, if you're not logging bugs. It does have a value, though, to people just to get an early sense of what's coming down the pike. I get that for sure. But in trade for that, we really would like people to not only look at the new stuff, but really engage us. And you have two opportunities. You can officially log bugs that go directly into our system if you're part of ETS. And there's also always an ETS forum that's a private forum for people in it. And that's where a lot of the really rich iteration discussions and things that we end up pulling out and launch take place. So the combination of those two is a very useful tool. It's why I've kept so close to running that program over all these years as a product manager. It's extremely valuable to me to be able to hear directly from you what's impacting, what you're struggling with, what you want.
So if you're interested in ETS, send Rick Kalman an email. If you're interested in that, you can figure out what his email is. It'll be a challenge for you, or a joke, or
if you send ETS at Claris.com, it'll come to me, and that's easy to remember.
You gave it away. You gave it away. All right. I was trying to make it a little bit of a lift for him. All right. So once again, though, the ask is that you find issues, you report them. You find issues, report them. I've been in this on and off for a lot of years, and I always feel bad, like, oh man, I didn't get in chance to report anything on that last release. Then I'm always in the back of my mind worried that Rick's going to take the cleaver to me and chop me out of the program. So you always have that hanging over your head. So you got to find some bugs and report them. Any final questions, Margaret, on your end, or?
Last one, I think you mentioned this earlier, but I think people didn't realize what you were saying. People are asking about the ideas section you have on Claris Community. Is that still active? Do you guys still look at that? Is that part of this at all?
So it's still out there, but we are rethinking the process to collect feedback at scale. Again, the way it's currently is built, it's way too unstructured. It's just full of text that anyone can express themselves the way they want. So we need a better way to collect that information so that it's a little bit more actionable for us. So it's going to be definitely part of the process. Again, the more we can have structured signal about what is needed out there, the better for us. But right now, the current implementation of that web page is definitely suboptimal for what we're trying to accomplish here. So I think I would definitely expect that to evolve or change. We definitely are interested in keep getting inputs from the community. I just don't believe that's the right way of doing it.
All right, yeah, I like the actionable submissions. Actionable submissions. That's the word. I'm going to write that down on my terminology word of the day. I like that. All right. Well, with that in mind, Margaret, I think we're done today. Hopefully next week we'll be back going with talking to Claris about the next topic. I know that there is potentially in the future a conversation about simplified licensing. I'm not sure when that will hit. It's not up to me. I just show up here, run the show. They decide what's important to them, and they let me know in that order, right? So with that in mind, I will welcome everyone tomorrow to, it's going to be a Claris Engage recap by Christian Schmidt, Christian Olson. Look forward to that. And with that, I'll see you folks later.
Thank you.
Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!